Sorry, apologise, members. Apologise. I'll start again. Good evening, members, and welcome to tonight's meeting at North East Lincolnshire Council. A reminder that this meeting is being broadcast live. Members will need to use their microphones at all times when we are in public session, including when voting as part of a recorded vote. Also, members, I'm pleased to say that on the 1st of April this year, I'll be carrying out my 24-hour sponsored walk and ask Paul Windley to pass it around. It's in aid of the Mayor's charities, so I hope you fully support me. And can I thank all members who have already supported me and all members who has agreed to take part in the event. I'll be sending out a further email over the weekend giving approximate times when we're in each of your wards. So I look forward to seeing you on that particular day. And I want to thank Chris Dunn, one of the council officers in particular, who's walking with me overnight to keep me safe. And it's been amazing. He's done all the timings and the route, etc. Make sure that we go into each of one of the 15 wards. Also, while I'm speaking, I just want to thank all members for their support and good manners. Hopefully tonight's meeting will be conducted in the same way for my last 4 years. And can I thank you for all your support throughout that period. This is my last full council meeting it is. So I'm hopefully going to be handing over to Councillor Goodwin. I am in May, but I only do half a meeting at that meeting. So I'm classifying this one as my last full council meeting, but thank you very much, members. Apologies from absence. Are there any apologies for absence from members for this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies received from Councillors Cairns, Freeston, Haggis, Jervis and Parkinson.
Item 2, I now move the minutes of the meetings of North East Lincolnshire Council held on the 12th of December 2024 and 20th of February 2025, and also the special meeting of North East Lincolnshire Council held on the 19th of February 2025. Do I have a seconder?
I rise to second those minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. May I remind members that comments on these minutes should be restricted to matters of accuracy. All those in favour, please indicate. Anyone against? It's fully carried. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members in any item on the agenda for this meeting? No. Item 5, question time. The council has received 2 questions from Sam Brown for this evening's meeting, who is in attendance this evening. Welcome, Sam. Would you like to put your first question as submitted?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, evening members. Thank you for this opportunity for me to ask these questions. Mr. Mayor, when NELC brought Freshley Place, was there any thought given into how the council would maintain and fix any repairs that needed doing and in how these would be funded? As there are ongoing repairs that needed doing that were there before the centre was owned by the council.
Jackson, as leader of the council, please will you respond?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Brown, and thank you for your question. And the answer is yes. The state of repair of Freshley Place was assessed as part of the due diligence undertaken prior to its purchase and was reflected in the price we paid for the asset. As a responsible owner, we have since put a planned maintenance programme in place to ensure the centre is maintained for the long term. This includes works to the car parks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Sam, would you like to put your second question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, what are the council's plans to deal with the RAC, reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete in Freshney Place, as many behind the scenes have temporary poles holding up the areas affected?
Councillor Jackson, please will you respond?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your second question. The current Freshney Place business plan was approved on the 12th of February 2025. This makes reference to the temporary propping that we've installed as a responsible landlord. It should be noted that no public areas within Freshney Place are affected by RAC. The business plan identifies a route to addressing the RAC on a permanent basis, and a business case will be brought forward based on independent specialist advice in the coming months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. And thank you, Sam, for your questions. I will arrange for a written confirmation of your answers to your questions to be sent to you. Agenda item 6, the leader's statement. Councillor Jackson, will you give your leader's statement, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members. 2 weeks ago, the inaugural meeting of the Greater Lincolnshire Combined County Authority was held in Lincoln Cathedral, a suitably grand location for an auspicious occasion. After 10 years of hard work and one failed attempt, we have finally achieved devolution for Greater Lincolnshire. And as members know, a mayor will be elected on the 1st of May, and I'm sure we're all out knocking on doors campaigning for our chosen candidate. Mr. Mayor, I do believe devolution is a great opportunity for both Greater Lincolnshire and North East Lincolnshire. It was great to see our borough so well represented at the reception after the inaugural meeting, especially the number and quality of the display stands from local businesses and industries. One key aspect of the deal will be enhanced pan-Humber collaboration arrangements, so we stand to get the best of both worlds. Mr. Mayor, we continue to see new businesses moving into the area as well as existing ones expanding. A game changer is Le Mans' recent planning approval for a multi-million-pound state-of-the-art carbon fibre manufacturing plant at Estuary Parkway, Grimsby. Sorry, Energy Parkway, Grimsby. This will be the first plant of its kind in the UK to supply this growing market, and it's great that it will be located here in Grimsby, demonstrating that our chemical sector is thriving. It will create nearly 400 quality, well-paid jobs on site and many more in local support industries. This is great news for the local economy and for local people. Mr. Mayor, in order to build confidence and attract new businesses, industries, residents and visitors, a vibrant town centre is vital. I'm not sure that was something that was entirely appreciated by some members during the debate we had in December about the future of Freshney Place. But Mr. Mayor, so much is now happening in Grimsby town centre. As I mentioned a few moments ago, the Freshney Place leisure scheme was approved at the December full council meeting after a somewhat lengthy and tortuous debate. If members have been into Freshney Place and into Victoria Street over the last couple of weeks, they will see that the hoardings are now in place at the western end of Freshney Place, and the scaffolding on the outside of the old British Home Stores building, which will form the basis of the new Market Hall. Demolition of the old Market Hall has also commenced. This is all happening in tandem with a number of other town centre projects which are moving towards completion. St James House will be opening within a few weeks as a new business and conference centre operated by eFactor. We've got the Horizon on-site youth zone, which will be opening in the autumn in the old West Havens Maltings. The NHS Community Diagnostic Centre, which occupies 5 previous retail units in Freshley Place, opens at the end of this month, not only providing improved medical facilities for our residents, but also an increase in footfall in the town centre, and helps us to diversify the use of Freshley Place. And finally, the planning application has been validated for 123 homes on Garth Lane. So we've got real momentum building now in the town centre, with renewed optimism and greater business interest. Further positive news for the town centre, Mr. Mayor, the recent announcement of the Plan for Neighbourhoods. This follows on from the previous government's long-term plan for towns, which was paused when the new Labour government was elected. Grimsby is one of 75 towns to be given up to £20 million of grant funding to be spent over the next 10 years on transformational projects to boost the local economy. These are likely to be linked to master plan regeneration schemes and further town centre enhancements. Funding will be allocated as from next month, with delivery based on business cases commencing in 2026. And Mr. Mayor, Cabinet recently agreed to accept grant funding from Homes England and government to support a refresh of the Grimsby Town Centre master plan, including exploring infrastructure improvements and regeneration around the wider Alexandra Dock, as opposed to just on the Garth Lane site. Mr. Mayor, as a East Marsh ward councillor, you're probably aware that there are a couple of negative stories about the East Marsh in 2 of our national newspapers in the past week. And I have to say, as leader of the council, it does rather annoy me the way in which the East Marsh and Grimsby in general is often portrayed in the national media. But let's have a look at a couple of more positive things which are happening within the East Marsh. A £3.1 million grant-funded housing retrofit scheme in Rutland Street, along with other related improvements, was approved at Cabinet this month. This is both a local and national pilot scheme, which, if successful in bringing about the energy savings and community benefits that are expected, could attract further grant funding in the future. Mr. Mayor, the genesis of this project was a visit from Michael Gove to Grimsby when he was Secretary of State. He went to the East Marsh to see the work being undertaken by Our Future and other community groups, and was clearly impressed. Our officers subsequently worked with government officials to develop a successful business case for this scheme on the back of that visit. A second piece of good news in the media this week for the East Marsh was the fact that YMCA Humber has submitted a planning application for a sports pavilion and changing rooms on Kent Street. This will further enhance the area and its sports facilities and will help improve life chances for young people in the area. So, well, quite a bit happening on the East Marsh at the moment, you'd be pleased to hear, Mr. Mayor, and I'm no doubt you're already aware of that. And Mr. Mayor, I was at the Children's Services Continuous Improvement Board meeting this afternoon. I can report that good progress continues to be made with the improvements within children's services, although, of course, we recognise there's still more to be done. Social worker recruitment has been successful, and now over 80% of our social workers are permanent. This is a real contrast to a couple of years ago when 70% of our social workers were agency staff. There's also been a very successful foster carers recruitment campaign. I think members would have had to have been locked away in a cave underground not to have seen some evidence of that over the past few weeks. Foster carer numbers are increasing, and we now have nearly 200 foster carer friendly businesses and schools across North East Lincolnshire. Consolidation of improvements and consistency in practice are the key as we move towards the Ofsted full inspection expected in June or July of this year. Mr. Mayor, turning now to housing. In the autumn, members may remember that the new Labour government consulted on revised housing targets for local authorities as part of their changes to the National Planning Policy Framework. The proposed target for North East Lincolnshire was 706 new homes per annum, and we lobbied strongly against this high number. The North East Lincolnshire target has reduced to 623 new homes per annum, still a huge increase on the 190 per annum from the old calculation methodology and the 415 per annum we promoted in the draft local plan, which we published for consultation in early 2024. Mr. Mayor, whilst we want and need to be ambitious for North East Lincolnshire and want to encourage more people to live in the borough, there is no evidence that the local housing market will support 623 new homes per annum, or that the local construction industry has capacity to deliver this number. Indeed, Mr. Mayor, capacity in the construction industry is a national issue. I have to say, the top-down approach to these housing targets is the wrong one, in my view. Of more concern to us, Mr. Mayor, is because of these high targets, is the need for us to identify even more potential sites for housing development, and the fact that we are no longer able to demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing land. There is now a real danger of losing control of housing development in North East Lincolnshire, with developers speculatively gaining planning consent on sites where we and local communities never wanted housing and where the infrastructure is inadequate. Moving from North East Lincolnshire to the wider world for a few moments, Mr. Mayor, and the worrying geopolitical situation in Eastern Europe, and in particular, Ukraine. I'm proud that we have been continuing to fly the Ukrainian flag over the town hall, and I wanted to take the opportunity to update members on the Homes for Ukraine scheme within North East Lincolnshire. We have supported a total of 122 Ukrainians in 86 households over the past 3 years since the war in Ukraine started. 37 of those Ukrainians have subsequently left our area or left our country altogether, which means we still have 85 in the area in 62 households. Many of our current Ukrainian guests will be reaching the end of their initial 3-year visa period and applying for the new 18-month Ukraine Permission Scheme. There have been no further announcements regarding the future beyond this extension. We are seeing very few new arrivals now, with the last one arriving in December of last year. Any new arrivals will be granted the new 18-month visa rather than the original 3-year ones. And tonight, I'd just like to give a big public thank you to everyone in North East Lincolnshire who has supported the Ukrainian people in any way over the past 3 difficult years. Finally, Mr. Mayor, the latest Council Action Tracking Report has been circulated. I can confirm that no special urgency decisions have been taken by Cabinet or portfolio holders since the last ordinary meeting of the Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. It's unusual for me to say anything at this stage, But can I thank you for your comments about the East Marsh? And I'm sure my East Marsh Ward colleagues will also thank you. And can I say, members, residents of the East Marsh are fed up of the attacks by the national media. Come and talk to the residents. Come and sit down and talk to the residents, like in other wards. I know for a fact in boroughs like Kensington and Chelsea, there is areas of deprivation. It's not just East Marsh. There's a street down nearly every town or ward in every town across this country. Thank you, Councillor Jackson, once again, but thank you for that. Agenda item 7, local government reorganisation. Report from the Chief Executive on local government reorganisation. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, members have the report in front of them tonight. I think we had quite a lengthy and robust debate on potential local government reorganisation at the special meeting that we held back in February. And I think it became apparent at that meeting that the four groups on the council were unlikely to agree on the way on their preferred way forward for local government reorganisation across Greater Lincolnshire, and how that may or may not affect North East Lincolnshire. I think what has become very apparent to all, and I think we all suspected this, was that the government's timetable of hoping to have a settled view from across the whole of Greater Lincolnshire by the 21st of March as to what local government organisation might look like across the county was totally unrealistic. And we do know that several different potential plans are going to be submitted from a number of different local authorities across the Greater Lincolnshire footprint. We have had some discussions as group leaders about how we move this forward in North East Lincolnshire, bearing in mind the fact that there is a broad range of views about how we might move forward. And it was agreed that the Chief Executive would put together a report which would include the views of the four groups, and that report would be submitted to government, not as a settled view of this council, but just as the view of the four groups on the council. The report is in front of you, along with a considerable amount of background information, which includes the original request letter from the Secretary of State asking for plans to be put forward. And the recommendations are set out on page 1 of the report, which is largely around noting the report, but also asks us to note what the situation will be for the 2026 elections within North East Lincolnshire, bearing in mind the fact that the Audit Commission, not the Audit Commission, sorry, the Local Government Commission has, the Boundary Commission has paused the review of the North East Lincolnshire boundaries. And the legal advice that the Chief Executive has received is that the 2026 elections in North East Lincolnshire will proceed as they would have done normally, i.e. 1/3 of the seats will be up for election, and that those who were elected in 2022 will be the ones who will be up for re-election in 2026, assuming that there is no government intervention in the meantime to cancel those elections if the local government reorganisation does proceed forward. So I would move the recommendations as set out in the report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Do I have a seconder?
I rise, Mr. Mayor, to second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Lindsay. Councillor Wheatley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I can safely say that this local government reorganisation timetable was not on my 2025 bingo card. It's not something we were expecting to be involved at such an early stage. But as we've now been pulled into this process, it's only right and proper that we have been given the opportunity to discuss the implications for our borough and, more importantly, the people who call this place home, including me. Mr. Mayor, the Labour Group have considered this reorganisation at length. We have, I believe, been pragmatic. We've been as pragmatic as possible and considered all of the options in a balanced and reasonable manner. We have looked at the implications for our area and have put forward a number of options to be considered by government. What we have concentrated on is what is best for our area, what is the best option for the economic prosperity of the residents, not just for now, but for the next 20 years plus. Our preferred option, along with all of the other groups in this chamber, is to remain as North East Lincolnshire, a unitary authority with a history of punching above its weight, an authority forged from the dying embers of Humberside County Council and the two borough councils of Grimsby and Cleethorpes. We have a unique identity that is proud and independent. We have a strong community spirit and a sense of heritage, recognising those sacrifices and the hard work of those that went before us. However, Mr. Mayor, we also recognise that we are a small area for a unitary authority, and that will limit our economic growth potential and ability to drive our strategic aims forward. Therefore, we as a Labour Group have considered many other options that could, if managed well, benefit our area by creating stronger economic links with our close neighbours. If it is necessary to do away with North East Lincolnshire, then it would seem logical that we would consider that North East Links is the most similar to us in terms of industrial economy. We already share a police and fire service. We are in the same health area and our hospitals share services. The council already shares some services with North Links, including the Director of Public Health. There is also the consideration that this would not meet the criteria for 500,000 as laid out in the white paper. However, we believe that a strong argument could be made that although 500,000 is manageable in some areas of the country, in very rural areas such as Lincolnshire, some scope needs to be given for sensible governance, and we do not think that a council stretching from Skegness to the borders of Doncaster is either manageable or would benefit our residents. We have also considered the current Lincolnshire County Council element of any reorganisation and would put forward that rather than a north-south split seemingly favoured by some of the other councils in the area, we do not see the logic in that, as economically the coastal areas are far more in common than areas such as Gainsborough. We would therefore think that the current Lincolnshire County Council area is too large to be a single-tier council in its own right, and therefore it would seem logical that Lincolnshire County Council would need to be divided into two new unitary areas, and our preferred option would be an east to west split rather than a north to south. Our final option that we considered as a possibility, if the 500,000 is non-negotiable, then we would look to reinforce the A180, A15 corridor from North East Links to North Links to the A1, taking in the district councils of West Lindsey and the City of Lincoln, to create an area that meets the size criteria and would also keep the main industrial areas of the area together. Lincoln University already has a presence in both North East Lincolnshire and North Links and shares many of the same strategic ideas around industrial growth. At the end of the day, Mr. Mayor, this is a position we were railroaded into by the writing of a letter, forcing us into a debate about our future governance arrangements that did not need to be taken yet. A decision that has had a massive effects already on our borough, resulting in a boundary review being indefinitely paused, the planned all-out elections due in 2026 now reverting back to an elections by third of 15 wards, general uncertainty, thank you, Mr. Mayor, general uncertainty around the future of our area. This needs to be resolved quickly to allow us to reassure the employees of this council and others around the area who will no doubt be worried about their futures, and also to ensure whatever the outcome of this reorganisation, we get the best possible outcome for our place. It's not about this council chamber and its occupants, Mr. Mayor. It is about doing the best by our residents. This is why, Mr. Mayor, we have been as broad in our options to send to government, as no one knows about this area as well as the people who live here. I'm disappointed that we were not given enough time to carry out a public consultation. But for government to make an informed decision, they need to have as many options as possible to look at. They will then hopefully come to the conclusion that what we already have is exactly what is needed to see this place flourish and prosper. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatley. Councillor Holland.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to expand on the pre-say that we set out in the paper. So our focus is purely on the best long-term interests of the residents of this borough, and trying to ensure that we retain all the many positives that we have here, for which dedicated council employees and councillors have strived over for many years. Other areas of Lincolnshire, they know their patches. I don't know their areas, I have to say. We have an outstanding senior leadership team and underpinning management layer that's supported by a stable, dedicated and motivated workforce. And that's taken years to achieve. We are now seeing huge improvements in service delivery, ranging from children's services to project management. That improvement continues at pace, and we need to stoutly guard and defend that position. Regarding children's services, the transformation over the last 2 years has been desperately needed, but at least another 2 to 3 uninterrupted years are needed to focus on nothing else other than continuous improvement and stabilisation. Our council has a very local feel. Localism creates the conditions for close relationship building, which is so apparent here. That ranges from our own wards at one end of the scale through to the council's relationship with major employers. The results of the work which officers and councillors have put in to also build really close connections to the third sector has been one of the key strengths that we have as a council. It is hard to see what this borough would gain from becoming part of a mega council of 500,000 people. We already operate to a very lean financial model. If there are efficiency savings to be had, we need to see the data to support that and be clear on the impact on service provision. What we have to lose is very evident. What we have to gain is virtually unknown at this time. We hear of large potential efficiency savings, and North Lincolnshire Council has produced numbers which need scrutiny. But on a turnover of more than £1.5 billion for all 10 existing councils, the estimated long-term savings per annum are between just 1.5% and 2.5%. And we need to remember the vast bulk of those savings will result from Greater Lincolnshire moving to single-tier local government. Nothing to do with us whatsoever. The revised financial analysis of March 25 carried out by PricewaterhouseCoopers could not be clearer. It states that the analysis still excludes the merging of small unitary authorities, and it should be considered supplementary to more detailed bespoke analysis within a local area. We always need to look for improvements, of course, and we already share services with North Lincolnshire Council. We can explore that further to find potential for further synergy that would be mutually beneficial. That may in turn lead to future amalgamation of the two councils if government remains intransigent. But it should be evidence-based, properly managed, and the pros and cons carefully evaluated. No major changes should be initiated without a comprehensive and unbiased local consultation, and the impact on local democracy needs to be factored in as a critical component. Looking at North Yorkshire Unitary Council, it has 90 single council awards, averaging 7,000 residents in each. How many councillors in this chamber feel they could still do a job with those sorts of ratios replicated, or would they even wish to serve on that basis? Large town councils are having to be formed in places such as Harrogate to try and fill a democratic vacuum and recreate localism. We already have huge change management ongoing on different fronts, including the end of the Eccles contract and the establishment of the new combined county authority. More radical change needs to be sequential, not concurrent, and not forced at pace, for which there is neither the support nor the capacity. The current position across Lincolnshire is confused and chaotic. Lincoln City Council is now proposing 3 unitary authorities by expanding its boundaries. District councils are coming up with their own bespoke plans, an entirely predictable mess. It seems that we do have a consensus starting point here. Given the choice, all 4 political groups appear to want to maintain the status quo for North East Lincolnshire. That is positive and sends a powerful message to Westminster. And I hope that ministers, civil servants actively listen, are prepared to explore all options with us. If the status quo for North East Lincolnshire is and remains the best option, then we should have the courage of our convictions and fight for it. We may or may not win, but at least we can look our residents in the eye and tell them that we gave it our best shot on their behalf.
1 minute, Councillor Holland.
Bigger is not always better. As I've said before, the criminal justice system, bigger is better streamlined approach, has produced some awful outcomes for those who work in it and for those who caught up in the system. So, as I said before, we need to get this right first time, and we need to really take our time on this, not be rushed, and we need to really look closely at what we could lose here in North East Lincolnshire. And really compare that hard with the potential benefits. And at the moment, those benefits seem hard to see.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Councillor Aythorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Liberal Democrat stance is very clear. We strongly oppose local government reorganisation because we believe it will weaken local democracy, increase bureaucracy, and fail to deliver real benefits. Every other political party in this chamber, Mr. Mayor, has stated that keeping North East Lincolnshire Council as it is should be the first preference. Yet, despite agreeing with us, they have weakened that stance by putting forward options for reorganisation within the report, opening the door to change when it should be shut firmly. Rather than rushing to submit options out of fear of being left behind, we should be standing firm and demanding the support and resources needed to make our council stronger, not providing ways to surrender control. And where is the local Labour MP in all of this, Mr. Mayor? We have the Labour government pushing reorganisation upon us, yet the local Labour MP seems to be silent on this issue. Why isn't she standing up for our council and making it clear that North East Lincolnshire should remain independent, particularly when it's the first preference of her local Labour colleagues? Of course, Mr. Mayor, Labour governments do sometimes get things right, but only after exhausting all other possibilities. This reorganisation sounds to us like one of those possibilities. Mr. Mayor, handing power over to a new remote mega council in any form will not serve our local communities. It will mean decisions about Grimsby, Cleethorpes and Immingham could be made by politicians from Scunthorpe or Lincoln who are focused on their own areas, not ours. Being a small but independent authority is not a weakness. It is a strength if we make it one. We should be fighting for stronger devolution that gives us more local powers, not fewer. We should be pushing for fairer funding so we can stand on our own 2 feet without being forced to increase council tax every year. And we should be working in partnership across Greater Lincolnshire without sacrificing our identity and independence. Mr. Mayor, the Liberal Democrats stand firmly against this reorganisation because we've seen it before and we know how it ends. We all remember Humberside County Council. It was too big, too detached and too inefficient, and local people rejected it. That's why North East Lincolnshire Council was created in the first place. Now, Mr. Mayor, history is at risk of repeating itself. And if these mega councils go ahead, we all know what will happen. Local services will suffer, just like at Somerset and Dorset, where costs have soared and services have collapsed. Councillors will be stretched too thin, representing far larger wards, meaning local voices are at risk of being lost. Children's services will be at risk, which is currently a fragile service that needs stability, not disruption. And costs, Mr. Mayor, are more likely to rise, not fall, as we've seen in many other forced reorganisations across the country. My Liberal Democrat group and I firmly believe in keeping local government local. We believe in protecting what works, fixing what doesn't, and resisting top-down changes imposed by a government that does not understand our communities. Mr. Mayor, leadership isn't about following the crowd. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. If we don't stand up for local democracy now, Mr. Mayor, we may not get another chance. So we will support submitting this report to ensure we have a voice, but let me be absolutely clear, we do not endorse reorganisation. It is disappointing that other parties have not stood as strongly by their stated first preference to keep North East Lincolnshire
1 minute,
Council
Councillor
as it
Ainsworth.
is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Instead, putting forward options that could ultimately lead to its dissolution. The Liberal Democrats will remain engaged in these discussions and continue to push for local democracy and a system that truly serves our communities, because North East Lincolnshire deserves nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aythorpe. Councillor Mickleborough.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's all very well sometimes when you're far removed from the seat of government and power to remain to a narrow ideology and what you would like to see happen. All the parties, has been made clear, would like North East Lincolnshire Council to remain in being. But we've already seen what the direction is from central government, and we can't hide our heads in the sand, picking up for North East Lincolnshire come what may. There is perhaps, we don't know where, don't know when, an alternative that is being mooted, and we have to be part of that debate. If we simply say that we want North East Lincolnshire Council to remain as it is, that's it, then there's a real danger that we might get a decision imposed on us. So we're being realistic. Yes, we want North East Lincolnshire Council to remain, but we're putting forward our alternatives in case the decision of central government is that we must have larger unitary authorities. So that is our position. We're being realistic. It's not that we don't want North East Links Council. We'd love to have it. We'd love to remain. But changes do happen. And we've got to realise that we've got to be at the table. If we just simply say, no, we don't want any change, then there's a risk that the government will impose something that doesn't take into account the views of everybody. Because this report includes the Conservative group, the Labour group, the Lib Dem group, and the Independents. We're all putting our views, and hopefully that will go to central government and there will become a feeling as to what the people of this authority, of this borough actually want. We're being realistic, Mr. Mayor. That's why we're looking at alternatives in case the first option, keeping North East Lincolnshire, is turned down out of hand. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mickleborough. I'm looking round the room. I can't see any speakers indicating. Councillor Morland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to engage in this debate because I thought it was quite straightforward. It's a requirement from central government, but it's good to see Joan of Arc of the Liberal Party trying to stand up for everything that everybody else stands for in this room. So why are the Liberal Dems separating themselves and trying to make some political capital out of something that we all agree with? All four leaders have said they would like to see North East Lincolnshire kept as is. But we realise that that is not the option. So what we've got from Joan of Arc is quite simply a throwing out of the pram toys, shouting, no, no, no. We need to have an adult engagement with the government on this, and to take the crash thing even further, to pull up the sides of your cot and say, I'm not playing this game, is rather ludicrous. We need to have grown-ups in the room. And I'm afraid that the Liberal Democrats are not acting grown-up by saying they want to pull up the drawbridge. It isn't going to happen. We need to be in the room to make sure that we get the best deal for all our residents and stop making political capital out of something that is a central government directive. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I remind members, when you're referring to an elected member, the protocol is you refer to them by name. That was out of order, Councillor Morland, and I won't accept that again during this meeting. So members, please follow this advice. Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make, I think it's a point of information regarding Councillor Aythorpe's speech. She referred to the Labour MP, and as you know, Mr. Mayor, myself and a number of colleagues from Immingham, Wolds, Waltham, New Waltham, Humberston, New Waltham, sorry, are not represented by a Labour MP as it happens. So I think she failed to refer to the other MP, the Conservative MP, who represents parts of North East Lincolnshire as well. Just thought I'd make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. any further speakers? I'm looking round the room. Councillor Lindy's got the right to.
Councillor Reid got the right to.
Yeah, but Councillor Lindy's got, he reserved the right to
He
speak.
didn't reserve his right, Mr.
No.
He didn't reserve it. So,
Leader to reply.
Mr. Mayor, not members.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't read out the Conservative group's proposals because they are very clearly set out in the appendix, and I'm sure all members have read them. But I guess there's there's quite a lot in common from the proposals that at least three of the groups are putting forward. Obviously, some significant differences as well. I think what is very obvious from what's being said by government and what I'm reading in publications like the Municipal Journal is that the two-tier system, as we know it in county council areas like Lincolnshire County Council, that's definitely going to go. And I guess the question is just how much, if any, we're going to get sucked into that process as a neighbouring small unitary authority. And I guess that's the crux of the debate. And one of the you'll see that one of the recommendations in this report is that we form a working group of group leaders supported by officers to continue to discuss this agenda as it emerges. And I think as several members have said tonight already, that's really important, a really important signal to send out to the workforce that we're sitting down and talking about this sensibly, and that we're assessing the situation, and that we recognise that we need to perhaps slow down the whole process. And I think inevitably government is going to end up with a slower process than it originally hoped. And I do agree with Councillor Morland and other members tonight who've said that we need to be part of that debate rather than sitting on the outside and pretending it's not going to happen, because something undoubtedly is going to happen. It's just a question of what and when. So nothing else to say, Mr. Mayor. I just hope that members across the chamber will support the submission of this report as it's set out on the recommendations within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I will now take a vote on this matter. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much, members. Agenda item 8, review of the Constitution, contract procedure rules. A report from the monitoring officer updating the council's contract procedure rules. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the report and recommendations are set out as the report explains. This is just tidying up our contract procedure rules as a result of change of national regulations. I don't think there's anything particularly contentious in there, and I hope members will support the report and amendments as set out.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harness.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to second Councillor Jackson's.
Any speakers? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick one. So on page 63 and elsewhere, we mention social value, and we refer to other documents which describe the legal obligation to test vendors' commitments to delivering social value in their engagements with us. I just think that other public bodies are being innovative in the way they test social value, and most crucially follow through to make sure benefits promised are delivered. For example, by establishing social value levies in procurements and using that to create budgets which can be used to support local community work. So I would just like to have seen more reference to this in the document. The new procurement legislation opens the door for us to do that as a significant purchaser of goods and services. And I feel that we may look at providing more detail on how we're going to do benefits realisation more generally. I think if we're going to use social value as the basis for assessing vendors, we should show how we're going to hold them to account for delivering that value. So that was just my reflection on the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any further speakers before I bring in the leader? Councillor Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just be brief, but having read the document, there was a lot of reference to the Your Tender, which is the council's e-tendering system. And I would just like to, I would hope that we are publicising to local businesses in North East Lincolnshire and the wider Lincolnshire community how they can put tenders in for providing services to the council via Your Tender, so that if we're getting services, ideally we can get them from businesses that are based in North East Lincolnshire.
Thank you, Councillor Mill. Any further speakers? Looking round, Councillor Jackson to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good points made by both members who've contributed to the debate tonight on this item. So thank you for that. And those comments are noted, and we'll make sure that we take them on board. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I will now take a vote on this matter. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous again. We're doing well tonight. Agenda item 9, Treasury Management Policy and Strategy Settlement 2025-2026. To consider a report from the portfolio holder for finance, resources and assets, representing the Treasury Policy Statement and the Treasury Management Strategy Statement for approval and adoption following the unfortunate ambiguity around the recommendations of the report presented on the last occasion. Councillor Harness, will you move the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the recommendations as laid out. Mr. Mayor, I did present the Treasury Management strategy at the last full council, so I don't intend to go back and repeat that. We all know that the Treasury Management statement pretty much covers the council's borrowing and investment strategy. As you say, Mr. Mayor, we did have an unfortunate end to that report, and as it states, legal implications on page 10 due to that original recommendations, and so as to avoid the ambiguity, the report is being brought back to the cabinet, as it went back to cabinet for onward transmission to full council, with the clear recommendation to full council being of approval and adoption. In all other matters, the report appendices are unchanged, save for the capture of the recommendation of Audit and Governance Committee that is in paragraph 8 of the report. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I move the approval and adoption of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Harness. Do I have a seconder?
I rise to second, Mr. Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Leader. Any members wishing to speak on this matter, please show. Councillor Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to refer to section 8, where there was an original omission in the report that came last month, which refers to the Audit and Governance Committee making a recommendation that the high forecast of borrowing over the next 3 years and the cost of servicing that debt be brought to Cabinet's attention. Now, Audit and Governance Committee met on the 30th of January. The following Cabinet meeting was on the 12th of February, and having checked the minutes, whilst there's a reference to the recommendation, there's no reference to those points being raised by a scrutiny committee being discussed at Cabinet. So that just causes me concern on a number of fronts. The fact that scrutiny have raised the concern of the high level of debt, and that appears not to have been referenced in the Cabinet meeting. Scrutiny have referenced the concerns regarding the high cost of servicing that debt. Again, there's there appears to be no discussion at Cabinet regarding that. So I'm a bit concerned that Cabinet haven't discussed these concerns that have been raised by scrutiny, and I'm concerned that there's no mitigations that have been raised at Cabinet as to why those risks raised by scrutiny shouldn't have been discussed. So I'm a bit concerned regarding those risks, and I'm also a bit concerned if scrutiny is not being taken seriously, because scrutiny is the key part of governance of this council. So just some concerns there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mill, Monitoring Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Mill. I can confirm that the Cabinet meeting, the referral from Audit and Governance was indeed considered. It wasn't captured in the minutes, as is usually the case. If I could also respectfully draw your attention to paragraph 8 of the report before you, that also captures the Audit and Governance Committee recommendation that the high forecast of borrowing over the next 3 years and the cost of servicing that debt brought to Cabinet's attention. And in my revised implications, my revised legal implications, I also make reference to that in the report. So in my view, Councillor, it has been adequately captured and considered by Cabinet.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Any further members wishing to speak before I bring in Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak, but I will do because the issue around question of borrowing has arisen again, and I think we discussed it when this report came to full council last month. I can confirm what the monitoring officer said. Councillor Harness did bring this to the attention of Cabinet when the report was presented, not in March but in February. The view of Cabinet was the same as the view that was expressed when we discussed it last month, that considering the size of the capital programme that we have in North East Lincolnshire, for the major improvements that we're seeing across the borough, which I talked about in my leader's statement earlier on this evening, that we've got a relatively prudent level of borrowing. We've got a much lower level of borrowing compared with a lot of other similar authorities. And in terms of the ratio of financial cost to net revenue stream, which is the point that was being made about the cost to the council taxpayer, that is projected to remain below the 10% target level, which we've always worked to as an administration, and which I believe the previous Labour administration worked to as well. And we don't want to see the authority indebted any more than it needs to be. But as I say, we have a very ambitious capital programme. If we want to see the improvements across Greater Lincolnshire that we all want, across North East Lincolnshire that we all want to see, we need to be investing in the borough. And I think with the investments we're making, we're still maintaining a very prudent level of borrowing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I will now take a vote on. Sorry about that, members. Any further speakers before bringing Councillor Harness to reply? Councillor Harness.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reference to paragraph 8, I was requested by Audit and Governance Committee to raise this at Cabinet, which I most certainly did do. And when we came to full council, which was the last full council, I made specific reference to the request from the Audit and Governance Committee about the level of borrowing and obviously servicing that debt. And I have actually got my statement with me if anybody wants to read it. So I most definitely raised it in this chamber. And that was before the last full council that I raised it at Cabinet. So what I would like to do is to move approval and adoption of the Treasury Management Statement and Policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harness. I will now take a vote on this matter. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? Clearly carried. Agenda item 10, dispensation, section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. Consider report from the Chief Executive recommending the provision of a special dispensation under section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members will have seen the report and I'd like to move the special dispensation for Councillor Marion Jervis as set out in front of council tonight.
Thank you, councillor Jackson. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to second. Thank you.
Any speakers on this matter? No speakers. I will now take a vote on this matter. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Item 11, appointment of interim chief executive and interim section 151 officer. Report from the leader of the council seeking approval of interim appointments to the positions of chief executive, head of paid services and section 151 officer. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As members will know, the council is legally required to appoint one of its officers to the position of head of paid service. The head of paid service is also currently the chief executive, and the current chief executive has given notice of his intention to leave the authority with effect from the 31st of May of this year. At a special meeting of the Appointments Committee on the 31st of January, the committee considered proposed interim arrangements upon the departure of the current chief executive. The majority vote of the Appointments Committee was to recommend to council that Sharon Root be appointed as the interim chief executive and head of paid service, and that Guy Lonsdale be appointed as interim section 151 officer, both from the 1st of June 2025. As members will be aware from the Constitution, appointments to these senior positions are reserved to full council. On that basis, I'm going to make a couple of recommendations to council with a slight amendment compared to the resolutions, which are recommendations which are actually set out in the report in front of you. So recommendation number one is that Sharon Root be appointed as the interim chief executive and head of paid service, returning officer and electoral registration officer from the 1st of June 2025, subject to a review in 12 months' time by the Appointments Committee. And recommendation two is that Guy Lonsdale be appointed as interim section 151 officer from the 1st of June 2025 on terms delegated to the Assistant Director, People and Organisational Development in consultation with the leader of the council, and again subject to a review in 12 months' time by the Appointments Committee. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Jackson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wheatley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to second and reserve the right to speak.
Are there any speakers on this matter? Councillor Holland.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the report, given that the minor amendments have been included that gives this a 12-month review period. Normally, on principle, I would be against open-ended interim appointments just purely on principle. But given that we've got a 12-month review period, given the fact that there are a lot of circumstances facing us actually out with our control, I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, councillor Holland. Councillor Mickleborough.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good idea having a period of 12 months for review, because we're talking about people being paid what is a very, very good wage for North East Lincolnshire. Lots of people in North East Lincolnshire on the minimum wage, living wage, and the idea of having somebody being appointed to a high wage, open-ended, which is what, because there's originally no mention of how long the interim period will be, so that caused some of us to have questions. But now this 12-month review is going to happen. I think that's a great idea, so I fully support the proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Mickleborough. I'm looking round. I can't see any Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very sad day when the chief exec said he was going to leave. And looking through the recommendations on page 119, we say there are no special HR considerations. And I think being the chief exec of our organisation is a tremendous honour and a massive responsibility. And I'm just a little bit concerned about the language of having a review in 12 months' time. That sounds like we're reviewing the potential to extend the contract that we've awarded. I think we should be assured there's a plan to put the roles out to open competition in the job market. And I think we should be starting the executive search process now. It's likely the search will take some time and we may find a candidate with a substantial notice period, which means that we need to extend the interim role still further. But nevertheless, we should undertake that search. I appreciate the need for stability as we enter a time of organisational change brought about by devolution and local government reorganisation. However, starting the search now may provide an opportunity for any new appointment to be involved in the shaping of our future and not just inheriting a done deal. I would, of course, like to thank Sharon and Guy for stepping into the breach. And these comments anticipate a full and transparent recruitment process, which will allow them to show the great work they've done and will do for our borough. But nevertheless, I think that this paper in front of us should have some reference to starting an executive search. And I think we should start that process now, understand and be open and transparent about what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'm looking round the room. No further speakers. Leader to reply.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased this appears to be getting general support around the chamber, but I have to say, a little bit disappointed by Councillor Henderson's comments. I think the report to the audit committee and the report to this council tonight clearly sets out why we think it's sensible to have an interim appointment. We've just had a few minutes ago a fairly lengthy debate about the possibility of major local government reorganisation, which may well affect North East Lincolnshire, whether we like it or not. And it would seem perverse to be advertising for a permanent chief executive at this stage when we don't know what the future of this local authority is going to be, and certainly any potential applicants wouldn't. And I'm surprised that Councillor Henderson not realising that that would severely limit the sort of individuals who might want to apply for the role from outside. Would you want to apply for a role like that you thought may not actually exist within 2 or 3 years' time? So I think, the reasoning for not going for a permanent position immediately is very, very clear. And the other thing that I would want to do actually before I advertised for a new chief executive, is to actually have a full review of the senior management arrangements within the authority to see whether or not we wanted to directly replace the existing chief executive. We may want to make other arrangements. And again, I'm very surprised that Councillor Henderson isn't suggesting that we should be doing that as well, rather than just accepting the status quo, which he seems to be doing tonight. So I'm pleased that otherwise we seem to be getting general support for both Sharon Root and Guy Lonsdale, both of which I am confident will do an excellent job in their interim roles, and I'm certainly in full support of both of them and look forward to working with them over the next year or however long it will be, assuming that the vote goes through in favour tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I'll now take a vote on this matter. All those in favour, please show. I'll just wait till the interim chief executive, when time comes, is appointed. Not yet. Thank you very much, members. Agenda item 12, Pay Policy Statement 2025-2026, a report from the Leader of Council presenting the Pay Policy Statement for the period 2025-26. Councillor Jackson, will you move the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that, as a council, we're obliged to consider and approve each year. And I will move the pay policy statement for 2025-2026 as set out in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I rise to second. Thank you.
Any members wanting to speak on this matter? Councillor Mickleborough.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Those of you who have been in this authority for some time might have a guess what I'm going to say, because it refers to page 127, and it talks about from April 2025, the lowest pay rate can be expressed as an hourly rate of £12.26. Now, my understanding is that some years ago, this authority signed up to the Living Wage Foundation, and looking on their website, it seems that the Living Wage Foundation's minimum wage for people outside London is £12.60. Now, I did approach our, appointee chief executive about this, but I think this is something that deserves to get a wider hearing, a public hearing, so people know that we're still subscribing to the Living Wage Foundation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mickleborough. Any further speakers on this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Mickleborough's comments are noted.
I now move to a vote on this matter. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Members will now take a break for 5 minutes. We will though. Thank you very much. Please be seated, members. Agenda item 13, notice of motion 1. A notice of motion has been submitted by Councillor Farron, seconded by Councillor Clough, submitted in accordance with the Council's constitution. Councillor Farron, you have 10 minutes in which to propose the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members, may I invite you to support this motion? I strongly believe that in doing so, we can work collaboratively to raise awareness of this fantastic support that NACOA can offer to our children and young people. But may I also ask you to reflect upon some of the content of our member development programme that has been presented to us by Anthony Douglas and his team, particularly Module 7, where we looked at how we applied our learning to bring about good multi-agency practice. We discovered that this can be achieved by learning, applying that learning, and then immediately putting that learning into action and delivery. In symmetry, this motion asks members to consider a NACOA learning programme, followed up with the relevant scrutiny panels working on dissemination and a plan for implementation throughout our borough within the relevant cohorts. This also aligns to the code of practice that members have been asked to sign up to, which is also part of our member development programme. It is particularly relevant to the following areas of that code. Education. Members must stay in touch with the nurseries, schools and post-16 services. Community leadership. Being the eyes and the ears of vulnerable and at-risk local citizens. Ambassadorial role. Speaking up for children and what they need. Mr. Mayor and members, I can share research with you tonight, and I will to some degree, but this is shared only with the intention of demonstrating why I would like you to consider supporting this motion. I completely respect and understand that there is a wealth of talent in our borough, and that is why I've asked, as a result of this motion, that the relevant portfolio holders work within their own cohorts to disseminate NACOA's messaging. I would like to ask members if you would attend a training session to allow NACOA a platform to raise this important awareness and embed this into our daily practice. By working together, we can help some of our children to understand they are not alone. But can I be completely clear here, Mr. Mayor? This motion does not set out to impede upon any of the great work our local services are already doing. It is to provide support for those children affected by a parent drinking. Our services locally are already working with some very large numbers. In 2015, 115 people were reported to be in receipt of treatment for alcohol dependency. In 2023-24, there were 395 people using the same service. But remember, 80% of alcohol dependent parents are not receiving treatment. So the majority of these children are not receiving any support from services. These children who are not receiving support are 6 times more likely to witness domestic violence, 4 times more likely to develop an eating problem, 3 times more likely to consider suicide, twice as likely to experience difficulties at school, and 3 times more likely to develop alcohol dependency as adults, and twice as likely to be in trouble with the police. Mr. Mayor, also given that alcohol is a factor in 42% of violent crimes and parent drug or alcohol misuse is a factor in 61% of care proceedings, may I urge you, Mr. Mayor and members, to support this motion to allow us as members to develop a strategy to include the great work that NACOA is already doing. Some of the support NACOA offers is centred around several outcomes. Listening non-judgmentally, reassuring children that it is okay to talk about their experiences and feelings. It is not being disloyal to their parent. Helping them to do things they enjoy, reminding them that they are important, taking a break and encouraging them to find activities they like. Helping them to develop healthy coping mechanisms. Let them know it's okay to feel how they feel and their feelings will come and go. Keeping children safe. Children are often very wary about the situation being taken out of their control. This service can offer specialised information in respect to this. Talking about alcohol problems. Starting to talk about alcohol problems and addiction can reduce stigma and enable people to ask for help now or in the future. There is a lot of research to back this up. I think some of the trailblazers in the alcohol-free sober cohort, like Andy Ramage from 1 Year No Beer and William Porter from Alcohol Explained, who have led the adult sober movement and started the Sober Curious movement, which is largely driven by our younger generations. We have to start to think about getting this support offer there for our younger people to consider. Mr. Mayor, if we don't act, knowing the effects this can have on a child, are we listening to Anthony, who as part of our journey to good or even outstanding inspection grade has asked us to depoliticise in our practice and work together for our children and young people? NACOA teaches us that a child in this situation can sometimes be resilient and better able to find ways to cope, but some cannot. So providing them with access to resources and support, we can mitigate the risk of unaddressed problems, which can continue into their adulthood. Cabinet accepted the Drug and Alcohol Treatment and Recovery Grant from the Home Office last week. This initiative would demonstrate our commitment to joined up working and offers us a more holistic approach. Vulnerabilities in our town are a contributing factor. Could I ask Mr. Mayor and members for your support to ensure that this is given the platform it desperately needs and stays firmly on that platform? Let us continue to enrich the work and dedication of those who have already given so much and contribute to the work tirelessly for our children and young people. I would like to, Mr. Mayor, take this opportunity to thank Anne-Marie Matson and her team, our portfolio holder for Children's Services, Councillor Cracknell, and her members who contribute to that panel. The great services we have in our town that are already working tirelessly to help with addiction, with you and the comeback. Anthony Douglas and his team for their insightful member development programme, and of course Liam Solberg from NACOA, who since I found him has agreed to listen to my ideas and has nearly been as enthusiastic as I was. NACOA are a great organisation that deserve our support.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Clough, will you second the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clough. An amendment has been submitted on notice. Councillor Jackson, will you move the amendment, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The amendment is as set out. And can I just say, Mr. Mayor, I'm in full support of the notice of motion and the 3 recommendations which are in the existing notice of motion. But I just want to add an additional one, which is as part of the current review of North East Lincolnshire Council's licensing policy, the policy be amended and strengthened where possible to address the concerns set out in this notice of motion. I'm just trying to intervene to try and further strengthen the aims and objectives of the motion, and I think if we can strengthen the controls, that if it's possible to strengthen controls within our existing licensing policy, that will certainly help to achieve the other 3 aims in the notice of motion. As has already been said, we know that the level of alcohol abuse is significantly higher in North East Lincolnshire than it is in some other parts of the country. And I think we ought to be trying to do whatever we can to try and minimise that. Members will be aware that there are 4 nationally set licensing objectives which are set out in our licensing policy. They are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and last but not least, the protection of children from harm. Now, I know that that last one, the protection of children from harm, is specifically directed towards licensed premises, but I wonder if we can do more widely to try and protect children from the abuse caused by alcohol, both by their parents abusing alcohol and also young people themselves getting into the habit of abusing alcohol, either because of the example set by the parents or because they get sucked into the drinking culture at an early age. And I also think, Mr. Mayor, that we, as part of the review of the licensing policy, we need to look at whether or not we can be more robust in enforcement of licensing conditions once we put a license in place. I mean, to me, it does at the moment appear to be very easy to get a drinks license in North East Lincolnshire. I would personally like to see it more difficult to do that. I mean, I like to have a drink like the next person. I don't object to people drinking, but I think what we ought to be trying to do is ensure that people are drinking in a more controlled way than perhaps happens in certain parts of the borough at the moment. And I think by enhancing our licensing regime, we might be able to do that. Just in terms of protecting young people, I've got some information collated by Public Health England around the rate of alcohol admissions to hospital other than through accident emergency departments, and this is in respect of under 18s. So in North East Lincolnshire is ranked 288th out of 326 local authority areas, one being the lowest value and least problematic, with 326 being the highest and most problematic. So you can see that we're quite high up in that league table in a negative sort of way. In respect of Yorkshire and the Humber, North East Lincolnshire is the second worst and problematic of the 21 local authority areas in the region. Again, this is in respect of—
1 minute, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. In respect of under 18s. The proportion of local young people admitted to hospital as a consequence of alcohol has risen yearly from 2010. Further data reveals that between 20 and 40 young people aged between 16 and 19 years attend Diana, Princess of Wales emergency accident department each month, where alcohol is a primary or secondary cause of attendance. So I think, you know, there's evidence there that we need to be trying to instill a regime within North East Lincolnshire, within licensing, that discourages young people from abusing alcohol. So I'd like to hope that we could get support for looking at our licensing policy to try and help to achieve that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Shepherd, will you second the amendment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to second the amendment and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Members are now speaking on the amendment. Any speakers on the amendment? Councillor Lindley.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I do support the amendment. I'm very keen to see this licensing policy being more robust. I think people that have been around for a few years now, and I think there's quite a few of us in here, there's some youngsters in here like Councillor Aysthorpe and Councillor Clough, but they may not remember the days of, sorry, and others, et al. Yeah. So a lot of us will remember the days, good old days, when the pub used to open at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then they would kick you out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then wouldn't reopen till 6. And then they'll kick you out again at 10:30. And I think if you mention that to young people now, they'll think, God, how did we manage? How did we survive? But that was the culture in them days. And, you know, it wasn't a bad culture when you think about it. And wind on to the current day. And we now look at Cleethorpes, where we have a whole myriad of licensing arrangements in place, where many pubs are open till 2 o'clock in the morning. In fact, there's some where you can still drink till 6 o'clock in the morning, and whoever wants to do that, I do not know. But and I think we've created a bit of a monster, really. And I think enough is enough. I think we really need, because the consequences of that level of drinking is plain to see, which has been highlighted by Councillor Farron and Councillor Clough. And I think we need to be responsible here in terms of supporting our children, because they are very much the victims. And I think you know, to promote drinking to excess to the levels that we are now is simply not good enough. And I think, you know, by strengthening those licensing restrictions and looking at things closer and being a bit more responsible in terms of licensing is certainly the way forward. And I think that's what, you know, certainly the amendment does that. But I certainly support everything within the original motion, which I will speak on later. But happy to support the amendment, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lindsay. Councillor Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I support the amendment. I welcome stronger licensing policy amendment. However, I must mention about the CIA on Freeman Street. So those who are not on the licensing committee, the CIA, it's a cumulative impact area. We currently have 3 within the Borough of North East Lincolnshire, one which covers just outside here, Grimsby Town Centre, one which covers Cleethorpes High Street, just that area, and also one on Freeman Street. However, licensing officers are wanting to remove the one on Freeman Street and extend the one in Cleethorpes. Myself and my East Marsh colleagues are firmly against removing this one on Freeman Street for various reasons. When I received the report from licensing officers, it stated that there's a desire to remove this CIA due to the lack of data, which surely means this is working, which is helping to address and deter what it was primarily aimed to do. East Marsh councillors and I are in ongoing discussions with council officers and Humberside Police with this amendment.
Councillor Emerson, you're speaking about something totally different. You're speaking on the amendment, please. The cumulative impact area is not within that amendment.
Yeah, I'm talking about strengthening the licensing agenda.
On interim officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Emerson just needs to have more focus on the amendment. I accept that CIAs are part of the licensing policy, but the amendment speaks to the objective of the policy around protection of children and young people.
Thank you, Managing Officer.
Managing Officer. Councillor Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so to wrap this up, what I'm wanting is what Councillor Jackson is saying, strengthening licensing, and this is an example of strengthening licensing to keep this in place.
Councillor Emerson, it's not an example at this moment in time. We're speaking on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't support the amendment. I'm really sorry. And whilst I recognise that reviews of policies are essential, I work in HR, and of course I'm going to support policies and processes and things. But and I actually welcome the fact that the licensing policy is going to be looked at. But this motion is not about licensing at all, and as such, the amendment has completely missed the point. This motion is about support in a practical way. It's about giving tangible help to our members, staff and other partner organisations by agreeing to the amendment will not support our vulnerable or at risk. It will just mire us in process rather than practicalities. Mr. Mayor, I don't think that the mover of the amendment has understood the ethos of this motion, and I urge members to reject the amendment. The original motion is supportive, and that does not need nor deserve to be amended into a policy review that's not relevant to the outcome stated. This motion about NACOA is not a licensing matter, which is why the portfolio holders mentioned in the motion are councillors Cracknell and Shreve and not Councillor Shepherd. Please do not weaken or dilute the ethos of this motion, and please do not support the amendment. This motion is carrot, not stick, and the amendment is stick, not carrot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatley. I'm looking round the room to see if any. Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Wheatley, you need to think of how you implement and help younger people. Okay, this amendment, you've got to understand it runs alongside the notice of motion. Fully support it. But if you can actually strengthen the policies and get more enforcement, you can then restrict the amount the youngsters may be available, the parents available. You've got to think it works with the notice of motion rather than against it. I am in support of the amendment. I am fully in support of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's strange actually that I wasn't mentioned. I normally am, but the amendment is there, Mr. Mayor, for us to create an opportunity for us that while we've got the review of the licensing policies going on, we can dig slightly deeper and look at one of the main principles, which is protection of our people and our youth. The NACOA and the training that we will get will be beneficial to us as elected members. It will be beneficial to the workforce here in North East Lincolnshire, and it will certainly be beneficial to the licensing officers. And I fully support it, Mr. Mayor. I think, as Councillor Croft has just said, they work in conjunction with each other. One supports the other. The fact that this is an amendment to that motion, which we fully support, makes no never minds. It gives us the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, to actually dig a little deeper and do a little bit further than what we would under this current motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Shutt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We welcome members' support this notice of motion, but I hope the general licensing and alcohol-related issues that members have brought forward, some specific to their area, doesn't dilute the substance and the power that's represented in the notice on this notice of motion. And I do believe that's a danger that we seemingly are expressing. Yes, I understand the wider picture, but it seems to dilute the point that Councillor Found is bringing forward. NACOA is specific, protecting the children of alcoholics. Can the leader ensure the policy and amended, strengthened where possible in this amendment is related to NACOA and this notice of motion, and not just about the licensing broader picture that you brought forward? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shutt. Councillor Bonner.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully in support of this motion, but the amendment appears to me to try to address a different problem. From personal experience, I know that a lot of this alcoholism and excess drinking takes place in the home and would not be affected by licensing conditions. I'm thinking in particular of one family I knew who had 4 children who all died prematurely from what I would consider lifestyle, large amounts of drinking being part of it. So for this reason, I will not be supporting this amendment. I shall be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonnet. Councillor Ayesthorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to support this amendment, and I support the motion before as well. But one of my concerns about it was I was unsure if the motion itself was strong enough to deliver the real measures of change that we need to see. The commitment to working with National Association for Children of Alcoholics, raising awareness is a positive step. But on its own, it won't solve this crisis. And to protect children of alcoholics, you need to address the root causes of where it all begins. And this amendment is a step in that direction. I still don't even think the amendment's enough, but it's all a positive step forward. And so that's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Ayesthorpe. I'm looking around the room. Councillor Morland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm duly admonished earlier. What I wish to say is that I understand what the amendment seeks to do, but I'm afraid it does move us away from where we are. Because having worked in social services, having worked with people who are consumers of alcohol, then what you find is that it's not done in the public house, it's not done in licensed premises, it's actually done at home, because they buy the majority of their alcohol from supermarkets which do not have the excessive charge, and they can buy a lot of alcohol from the supermarket at a greatly cheaper price than they can in the public house. And therefore, I understand what's trying to be done, but we're getting two things mixed up. The licensing laws maybe need to be addressed, but in this case, we're looking at support and how we can help children who may or may not suffer abuse from a drinking culture in their household. Now, having worked, as I said before, having worked in social services and having been a housing support worker, I know that what happens is the individual may go in the pub, but if it's a family that drink, the consumption of the alcohol is done in the home, and it's there that's the problem. It's not what's happening in the street. We've got to remember, people try to keep any alcohol abuse quiet. They don't want it drawn to attention. And in some cases, it can be seen as a mental illness. I know we're touching on, but some people, it can be seen that it's a medical intervention required, and the licensing laws here do nothing to assist that. It's a medical intervention or a social intervention. It's a societal problem at a social level. And in some cases, some people are actually deemed to have a propensity to alcohol that is not necessarily because they go in the pub. It could be that it's in the home and it's addressed there. So I would ask that the spirit of the motion is supported, because if we can get any help whatsoever from any agency anywhere, then it behoves us as a council and as parents in loco parentis, as guardians of children, we're all signed up to that as local councillors, then it behoves us to ensure that we can, as best as possible, give that support wherever we can. And I do say, I understand why the amendment's been brought, but I do feel that it's in conflict with and may draw away from what's intended, which is support for families and children who may or may not be abused in an alcoholic household. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morland. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually support the amendment, but I wanted to just have a minute just to say why. I thought the original motion was absolutely fantastic, and I completely agree with Councillor Wheatley's characterisation of the challenge. And I think point 3 in the motion covers that and gives a mechanism for a proper debate and discussion, and a mechanism for the council to act through its health and social care offices. I think that the amendment is additive. I don't think it's competitive. I think it's not or, it's and. And so for that reason, I think it's a welcome addition to this. And I actually agree with Councillor Aistop. There are probably other things that we could do as well to add to this. And I would hope that the work that's being done by the health and social care groups in the council addresses that and uses their influence across the chamber and across the other different groups to maybe bolster that out. I don't think we need to thrash that out today in this council meeting. I think we all seem to be in heated agreement that we like the motion. We think it's absolutely brilliant and the right thing to do. I think we're all in agreement that we don't want to water it down in any kind of way. I think we're in danger of falling out with each other when we don't really need to. I think I support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Any further speakers on the amendment? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I first saw the amendment, I was a bit confused to why it was relevant to the motion. So I approached the bench and asked them what was the intention of this amendment, and they gave me the answer that you've all heard tonight. And so I've had to think about it quite heavily just while we've been here, because and I've had to think whether it's actually constitutional as well, because this motion is all about supporting children. That's what it's about. You've all read it. It's about supporting children. Whereas the amendment is a different line altogether. And the different line it's taking is about controlling drinking, which some people might say, well, if you control drinking, it'll eventually help children. And perhaps it will. But that isn't what this motion is trying to address. This motion is trying to address, it's trying to highlight the issues, it's trying to get more information to the council, and it's trying to bring to attention not only of the council but the wider public of issues of children that are suffering in alcohol dependent families, where we've got no evidence at all that those families are buying their alcohol from licensed premises, but other than supermarkets or such like. But we've got no evidence.
On a point of information, Mr. Mayor, supermarkets also have to have licences if they're selling alcohol.
I did address that, Mr. Mayor. I did say other than supermarkets, but we have no evidence either that they're drinking, that they could be drinking in pubs and clubs as laid out by some of the Conservative members. So the point I'm trying to make is, how does it directly enhance the motion? I don't think it does. We've heard tonight from the leader saying there's a review. We've heard tonight from the leader saying one of the priorities is protection of children. If we're having a view and we've got that priority in our licensing policy, why aren't we making those gestures and those policy changes with that in mind? We don't need them. We can do that anyway. That's the point I'm trying to make. If we then do that anyway, which I think we should, I absolutely acknowledge what's been trying to be done here, Mr. Mayor, trying to bolster it a little bit. I absolutely acknowledge that, and I'm not against that at all. But if we do that anyway, because we're able to do it under the review, then the motion itself will then concentrate on the children, and it'll concentrate on what the motion is trying to achieve, which obviously people will read out. And I think that under them circumstances, and I have had to really think about whether I support the amendment or not. And I said earlier to my colleagues that I was going to support it, actually, but I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind because of the arguments I've just laid out. We can do the motion, the amendment anyway.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, it takes away, it don't actually complement at all, in my view, the motion. It's so I think we can vote against the motion, the amendment. Let the motion take its path, and we can do the review with children's safety in mind and achieve both things at the same time. I just firmly believe we can do that. So I do welcome the suggestion of the review and actually putting it in there. I just don't think it needs to be part of the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Shreve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it'd be really good if we got to the vote on the amendment as quickly as possible, because, and I support the amendment, by the way, I don't think it dilutes, it's additional to, and when we go back to talk about the hopefully amended motion, in the speech that I will be making, it will be made extremely and abundantly clear that the amendment does not weaken the 3 existing proposals, which will be 100% supported. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shreve. Councillor Holland.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I support the amendment. If we look at NACOA's aims, yes, it is around children, but one of the aims, it states to promote research into the problems they face, that's children, and the prevention of alcohol use disorder developing in this vulnerable group. So it's also about prevention of alcohol use disorder developing within children. And I think the amendment, I can see that actually helping that. Because yes, we get cheap alcohol from supermarkets, we all know that. But if we look at where children get alcohol from, it's not from the supermarkets because they are a lot stricter. So I don't see anything that the amendment is saying actually negates from the original proposal, which I support. And from just purely looking at that aim in itself, I only see it as a positive thing. So I support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I am really, really concerned about underage drinking, about young people drinking, about the extent they drink, how long they drink for, and the effects on their lives. I just honestly think that anything we can do in this council to help the situation generally is a good thing. I'm Deputy Chair of Licensing. I saw this as a great opportunity for us to be able to take a step towards really coming down on landlords who aren't taking enough interest in the age of the drinkers. If I go to the States, I can't get a drink at the age of 60 without ID. My son couldn't get any wine at the wine store because he was under 25. We're just too lax, and I think we need to tighten up in any way we can. Yesterday, I heard about young girls having their drinks spiked in Cleethorpes in a nightclub and virtually not being conscious on the way out. Now, if that's not enough cause for us to add an extra addition to this motion, I don't know what is. I support both the amendment and the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Is there any further speakers on the amendment? Councillor Patrick.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to raise a point of order, if I may, and I say this without prejudice, just for clarification, because a number of members have spoken in the chamber and not entirely sure how necessarily this amendment can actually directly relate to the original motion, and Councillor Wilson actually did raise, he's not entirely sure if this is constitutional, and I would think that the challenge around this, and the Monitoring Officer are usually quite strict when it comes to his amendments about how well they actually relate and how he rules them out of order quite regularly on a frequent basis, has let this one through. So I would just like to seek clarification before any vote on this is actually taken, how there isn't a gap, namely that the original motion is about what individuals do legally within their own home that has an adverse effect on the upbringing of children around their impact of alcohol in their place of residence, and also the better regulation around the sales of alcohol within the actual borough, because I can't actually see how, if we actually made the sales of alcohol strict within the borough, the issues raised in this motion would actually be
Councillor
helped. It's
Patrick,
going-
are we making a speech or?
I'm raising a point of order, Mr. Explain the point of order and the challenge, the amendment as it is, Mr. Mayor, if I can please continue. So I don't see, if this amendment is actually passed, how this would actually add to the original motion, namely that this alcohol presumably is actually entering the home legally, all at the same time under the regulations, and the tightening of the regulations as they stand would be very unlikely to meaningfully impact on the issues actually raised in the original motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Monitoring officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Patrick, appreciate the point of order. Constitutionally, the amendment to a motion must be relevant to the motion, and will either be to leave out words or to add words, as long as it does not negate the motion. When this came across my desk, I had in mind that alcohol abuse and children and family is a multifaceted issue, and we as a public authority have certain statutory duties. One of those is licensing. I'm therefore of the mind that the licensing aspect is clearly relevant to the motion, but I will not be drawn further into any debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monitoring Officer. Councillor Farrant to reply to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got to say, I did fear this kind of debate around this motion, and I really tried to make it quite clear what I was trying to do here, what I was trying to bring today. Yes, NACOA do support research, but it's research into the issues that children face when they are affected by parents drinking. They're not there to look at the underlying problem. They're not there to fix children. They are there to support children and offer them support. Now, if you listen to speakers on their podcast, like Sarah Drage, whose dad died of alcoholism, they will say quite categorically that if they thought at any time in their past that this support would have meant that social services would be knocking on the door and that they would put their parents at risk, would have gone anywhere near it. So we are on a very thin line here, and that's my worry. They are supposed to, their aim is to offer help and support, not to fix the children. They are a solution. They're not a solution to overall issues. It's a support mechanism. They're not about changing the actual culture in the town or what people are doing in their own homes. They are there to support the children. So I would just like members to think about, and I know that it's a debate and that's what we're here for, but I just wanted to clarify what NACOA are about. They do have a platform. They've got they have podcasts. You can listen to people that have been affected, adults that have been affected as children, and you can listen to, you know, how they feel, and that might make you understand what exactly they're trying to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Farrant. In accordance with the Constitution, I will now take a recorded vote on the amendment. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder to members when casting their vote to have their microphones on. The members are voting on the amendment, moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Those in favour of the amendment say for, those against say against, those abstaining say abstain. Councillor Aisthorpe.
For.
Councillor Augusta.
Against.
Councillor Basant, Mr. Mayor.
For.
Councillor Bonner.
Against.
Councillor Boyd.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Brooks. Councillor Clough.
Against.
Councillor Cracknell. Councillor Crofts.
For.
Councillor Dawkins.
For.
Councillor Downs.
For.
Councillor Emerson.
For.
Councillor Farron.
Against.
Councillor Goodwin.
Against.
Councillor Harness.
For.
Councillor Hasthorpe.
For.
Councillor Henderson.
For.
Councillor Holland.
For.
Councillor Hudson.
For.
Councillor Humphrey.
Against.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Kazmarek.
Against.
Councillor Lindley.
For.
Councillor Mickleborough.
Against.
Councillor Mill.
Against.
Councillor Morland.
Sadly, against.
Councillor Patrick.
Against.
Councillor Pettigrew.
For.
Councillor Shepherd.
For.
Councillor Shreve.
For.
Councillor Shutt.
Against.
Councillor Sylvester.
For.
Councillor Swinburne K.
For.
Councillor Swinburne S.
For.
Councillor Wheatley.
Against.
And Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Letter members, the result of the recorded vote for the amendment, for 23, against 14. The amendment is carried, and item 4 on the amendment laid out before you now becomes part of the substantive motion. Thank you.
Any members indicate? Councillor Shreve.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I would wish to speak on the amended motion. Is that, am I correct to do so? Thank you very much. I'd like to stress again that the three recommendations in the original motion still stand, and I don't expect RCOA to get involved necessarily in the licensing element. They do their job. I rise to support the amended notice of motion in the strongest possible terms. Since this notice of motion was originally posted, and I was actually in New Zealand at the time, I did but ask officers to give me some verification and support of the statistics under NACOA, the National Association of Children of Alcoholics. Whilst the statistics in the notice appear to be national, local trends are very similar. But for the fact that locally alcohol-related harm, whilst generally increasing in adults, as a positive for us, oddly, is consistently declining over time in young adults, as reflected in our own lifestyle surveys. So that's a slight positive that comes from all of this. And the propensity of young children to purchase alcohol has been declining steadily in North East Lincolnshire for the past 5 years. That said, I don't want to minimise the scale of our local issue, and I fully accept the premise of the motion. Turning to NACOA. NACOA are, and I've done this research now, they are a well-respected organisation whose offer includes to provide information, advice and support for children affected by parental drinking, and to promote research into the problems of alcohol use disorder, amongst many other things. I am prepared to request that officers contact NACOA with a view to discussing avenues of support and dovetailing and complementing the current offer provided by Commission Services and VCSE services in a partnership approach. As requested, subject to the notice being approved, my colleague, Councillor Cracknell, and I will report back to full council with an update in due course. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shreve. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Mayor, and I congratulate Councillor Farron on an absolutely brilliant first motion, a very strong start off the starting blocks. I rise to support the motion as amended, and I must actually say that all in all, with the amendment, I didn't have a huge amount of issues with the amendment, but I need to seek some clarity on that, because we know that certain groups in this chamber are getting somewhat of a reputation for slightly misrepresenting what's said and voted on at this meeting. But I would say that there was actually only one thing with the amendment in particular that I had an issue with, namely that it was an amendment. It didn't need to be an amendment at this time. And in particular, what I found particularly confusing about it, and I certainly agree with the principles of this, because you can go to Heneage Ward, you can go to East Marsh, West Marsh, and I'm even sure in the depths of Leafy Walls, where you'll see challenges caused by alcohol abuse. But I wonder why. So we've had a Conservative administration for 5 years, and now this is the first time I can remember them really talking about this in this chamber, and they needed a notice of motion to actually do so and put an amendment on top of that. And I just think that's really sort of put a bit of a tarnish on something that could have been a very nice and positive, straight to the point motion. I won't bore the chamber with any more statistics tonight. I'm sure we've all got those around these particular issues, but I think it's absolutely brilliant that this is actually going to get the consideration it duly needs, because within the family home, of course, over many decades, I'm sure it's been debated in this chamber about some of the illegal activities and abuse that children can actually suffer from in the home. And then certainly legal activities have been considered by various governments and councils over the years that can adversely impact in the home, such as smoking in the home, for example, where families are concerned. But the issue about alcoholism amongst children and families, I don't think really gets the attention it deserves. And I'm so glad that it's been brought to us here tonight. And I would say from my own experience, I was personally lucky that I was brought up in a household with parents where they taught me that although you can enjoy a drink, you've got to respect the fact that there is a big difference between a pint of beer and a pint of Vimto. And I was certainly brought up that way, perhaps until I became a student and lived on my own. But those are certainly some stories for another time. So I would close by saying that I think this amendment really comes down to an extension of the improvement journey this council's gone under. Obviously, Anthony Douglas has been at pains to point out to us that the safeguarding and the upbringing positivity of children in our borough is something that we all need to take ownership of and actually drive. And I really think this motion is a reflection of that, truly in action, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Clough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just be brief, and I think I'll differ a little bit even from my colleagues. The amendment's gone through. I do think two things have been conflated unnecessarily. The work that NACOA do is very niche. It's very unique. It's relatively hidden, so as not to cause fear, so to get rid of stigma. And I think, and I would like to go back to something that Councillor Shreve said, which was he will contact them. And if we truly are working together, if we truly want the best outcomes, why didn't we contact them before like we did? They never said what we need is stronger licensing right now. They never said that that would help them. And I think when we railroad, just to get our own voices heard, we sometimes step over the very charities, the very professionals who work to support ongoing in our communities, a hidden issue. And I think if the contact had have been made first, and that could have come on the amendment, that we have been told by this charity that these two things do work alongside each other and we do welcome it, then we would feel different about it. But my colleague Councillor Farron spent a lot of time with NACOA and a lot of time asking how difficult is their job, how difficult is their role, walking a real tightrope between not exposing parents but letting children feel free to feel safe to be able to talk. It is completely different to licensing. I welcome that people have supported the motion, but a lot of time tonight we have not spoken about the children. We have not spoken about what NACOA do. And I think the fact that we've strayed off topic several times shows that there wasn't a big enough understanding to bring an amendment at this time. I just think what would be better and what would show true working together for the betterment of our community is making contact with those professionals first and saying, we're considering doing this. We agree with the motion, we agree with the support that we want to bring to the chamber, we want the training. Why don't we have the training, listen, and then say about licensing? They are two completely different things. I do think it's muddied the waters, and that is a shame. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clough. Councillor Acethorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I stand to support the motion with the amendment. Alcohol harm is one of the most pressing public health issues we face in North East Lincolnshire. The statistics speak for themselves. Our area has significantly high rates of alcohol-related illness, premature death, and family breakdown compared to the national average. But this isn't just about alcohol misuse. It is part of a wider crisis that fuels mental health struggles, creates lasting trauma, and continues to affect families for generations unless real action is taken. Mr. Mayor, children growing up in a household with alcohol dependency are far more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and emotional distress that can follow them into adulthood. Many fall behind in school, live in fear and instability, and some tragically repeat the same patterns later in life. If we fail to act on this now, Mr. Mayor, we won't just be ignoring an alcohol problem, we'll be allowing an ongoing mental health crisis to take deeper root in our communities. However, as I mentioned earlier, while I support the sentiment behind this motion, I must question, is it strong enough to deliver real measurable change? The commitment to working with the National Association for Children of Alcoholics to train professionals and raise awareness is a positive step forward, but on its own, it won't solve this crisis. Awareness and training sessions are only valuable if they lead to real interventions for children in need. So, Mr. Mayor, as I said, I will vote in favour of this motion because it moves us in the right direction. However, for real change to happen, we need clear commitments to early intervention, better access to mental health support, and increased treatment for alcohol-dependent parents. Without these, Mr. Mayor, we risk acknowledging the problem without delivering real support to the children who need it most. So while I welcome this motion, I urge the administration and those bringing the motion forward to ensure this is not just a one-off awareness campaign, but the start of a serious, ongoing effort to break the cycle of alcohol harm in North East Lincolnshire. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Mayor, motions don't change lives, actions do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Acethorpe. Councillor Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it was mentioned earlier that we'd sort of strayed off topic, and I think about we heard a couple of speakers who were still going on about the amendment instead of looking at the merits of an excellent motion, and they spent the speaking time speaking about the amendment, moaning about the amendment instead of, you know, there's some really good stuff in here. NACOA, that's up these leaflets. I'm taking them with me because they're absolutely fantastic and they tell you there's so much there. But we need to look at the problems. Drinking problems with families doesn't just stay within the family. It develops into something else. It develops into an intergenerational problem because you expose our children to a culture of drinking, and that becomes the norm. And all of a sudden, they'll grow up drinking in their families, and then their children will see that, and it goes on. But when we think back to COVID certainly triggered a change, a severe change in our drinking habits. No longer were people going out. There were people because of COVID, they were obviously staying at home and drinking at home. But that after COVID, that actually stayed on. People tend to stay in more now. And if you look at a lot of houses now, a lot of people, they have bars in the gardens, and they see that as that's their social gathering place now. They don't go to pubs anymore. They drink at home. The advantages of drinking at home, obviously, it's cheaper, more convenient, and it also allows them to drink more because they don't have to worry about the expense of it. But obviously, drinking at home, it exposes the whole family to that, and this is what we need to really get a grasp on. And and there's been talk about alcoholics, and let's not forget that this is not just restricted to alcoholics, because you get people who have a culture of binge drinking, perhaps at weekends, who, whilst they wouldn't meet the criteria of being alcoholics, it's certainly still binge drinking at weekends is still a significant problem. I certainly support the education programs. I mean, they're great. NACOA providing some excellent support, and you just look at the patrons on there, and some of the patrons have actually had first-hand experience with alcohol as well, and so the stories and the support that they can give is exceptional. So I think the amendment absolutely does support the motion, and I'm a little bit disappointed that really that the people are just aggrieved that the amendment was passed, and they're not focusing more on the actual motion, because this is what it's all about. And I think we need to really do focus on this. This is really important. This is our children that we're talking about, and I think we need to just remember that and focus on this motion, which I fully support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lindley. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The longer this debate goes on, I think the more it does this room a disservice, actually. And the more I worry about the points that Councillors Clough and Farron have made about what we're trying to achieve here being diminished, and having a debate that takes place in the wrong place. Actually, what this is about is a very specialist organisation trying to wrap their arms around our kids. And it's a really well-researched piece of work that's been put in this motion. And I made the point earlier that the amendment was additive, not dilutive. But actually, we've got to make sure that in taking this motion forward, because we're all going to vote it through, we should do, that we don't diminish point 3, which is really about Councillors Farron, Clough and others working closely with Councillors Shreve and Cracknell to actually get this done. And actually, that scope is small, it's doable, but it's really focused, it's well researched, you've got the right partners. So I honestly, I'm all for a debate, but actually I think we should just put it to one side for a minute and concentrate really on bullet point 3, which is really clear on what the value of this motion is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Shutt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't keep members long. Obviously, it's getting to that time of night. My dog's missing me already. I will bring you back to NACOA and the National Association for Children of Alcoholics. I think we have diluted it a bit. It is part of what we do. I get that, and I'm sure most of you do, even though some of you get a bit frustrated about it. It's a niche organisation, and it's already been expressed. And we need a clear focus on this notice of motion and its recommendations, as already been pointed out. But I'm going to go a bit further. Councillor Shreve has already made a promise about dealing with NACOA, contacting NACOA, bringing something from NACOA to this place, to our members. So I'm going to hold Councillor Shreve, Councillor Cracknell to that promise to contact NACOA, focus on this council's response to the issues raised in this notice of motion. Thank you.
Councillor Shutt, is there any further? Councillor Cracknell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well done, Councillor Farron. Well done, Councillor Clough. Because what you've done is you brought to our attention an issue that the misuse of alcohol can impact severely and negatively on families, and particularly on children. Some years ago, I think Councillor Clough referred to the fact that we should have been doing something earlier. I mean, sadly, there have been competing priorities in children's services for many, many years, as this chamber is well aware. Some members that have been elected for some time will remember there was a group called the Fed Up Group, and I don't know whether Councillor Wheatley can remember, I'm sure Mr. Mayor can remember, where we particularly worked with the children of families where alcohol was an issue. it was an extremely successful project, the FedUp project. It actually took children picked them up from school and took them to an independent place where they could freely talk and were given support in the widest possible sense to deal with what they were experiencing in their families. So I don't want you to think that there wasn't something. There was, but again, competing priorities some time ago. Sorry. Well, then you will know all about it. And it was a tremendous, tremendous project. And I think that, I hope then that has somehow influenced what you're bringing to the chamber, because it really was very successful. But again, you know, we lost sight of it some time ago. So I'm very, I really do mean what I say in saying it's very important that you brought this to our attention, and quite rightly so. I just want to say that substance misuse and hidden harm have been identified as a need through the early help strategy group, and I know that public health officers have also been tasked with looking at this particular issue. We do have a relationship with the voluntary sector in terms of we are with you, and we have for some time. But I think that what you've done tonight is really bring this to our attention in such a way that the relationships we already have and the work that our officers are currently doing can really now be strengthened. And I think the motion will also add pace, and I think that's important, add pace to the broader sentiments that you're addressing in here, not just the training, but I think it goes wider and deeper than that. The protection of children is paramount. We know that. We've all talked about that in this chamber, absolutely paramount. And I don't want to water that down in any way. We have had issues with drinking in public places, and sadly children witness that. We've done a lot to try and say we don't want to have drinking in those public areas for the sound reasons. But I think what you've done is, in bringing this motion forward, is you brought it to our attention, to all our professionals, to us here in the chamber, and I assure you that I will do what I can along with my colleague in terms of public health and children's services to ensure that we do our best to really make a difference, and I will report back to this chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cracknell. Any further speakers on the motion as amended? Councillor Jackson to reply.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, first of all, I will just say, of course, that as I said earlier, I'm in full support of the original notice of motion. I think it's great that you're bringing this forward, and well done on proposing it. You know, my amendment was there to try and further strengthen it, because what we're supposed to be doing here tonight is helping children, and I think anything we can do to potentially deal with loopholes in our licensing regulations that may not be in the best interest of children at the moment is something that we should be doing to try and help children and young people now and when they become adults. So I think it is really important, and I don't really want to be negative and political at this stage, but I really can't understand why the Labour group was so against the amendment. I'm just thinking about what the public will think out there as they watch this being live streamed, and they'll quite frankly, they'll just think you're dancing on the head of a pin, and they'll have never seen as many people on the head of one pin in the past as they have done tonight. It's just absolutely incredible. Just because it's not your amendment, you couldn't accept it. And I'm not going to take any lessons from Councillor Patrick about unnecessary amendments, because it's only a few council meetings ago that Labour group proposed an amendment thanking the member of Parliament for doing her job, basically. So, you know, we don't really need any lessons from Labour, and I just think it was incredible that you were unable to accept the amendment in the spirit in which it was offered. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I will now take a recorded vote on the motion as amended. Chief Executive.
Mr. Mayor, conscious of the time, conscious of the need to perhaps expedite the rest of the business before we meet the guillotine cut-off point of 10 p.m. My sense, looking to the group leaders, is that there is a sense of unanimity in the chamber on this. If there is, it would be recorded as such by a show of hands, i.e. a recorded unanimous vote. If there's not a sense of unanimity, looking to the group leaders, we'll go through the recorded vote. I'm just trying to help. What's the sense? Mr. Mayor, call the vote by show of hands.
Vote by show of hands. All those in favour, members? Thank you very much, members. And I'm just going to make a comment on what Councillor Cracknell said, which I think was very valid. A former member of this council, Councillor John Paul Howarth, was actively involved in setting up that group. Now move on to. Thank you very much, Councillor Mickelbrook. I'll just wait a second, members. Councillor Holland, please would you ask your question, which is to portfolio holder for finance, resources and assets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could the portfolio holder please confirm how many individuals have been either made compulsorily redundant or given early exit packages over the last 2 full financial years, and what was the total cost?
The harness to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank Councillor Holland for the question. Could I signpost Councillor Holland to the statement of accounts where a lot of this information is readily available? If I could just embellish or explain that answer a little bit more, it is not appropriate to go into granular detail or reveal information that is likely to reveal the identity of an individual in a public meeting. This is exempt information under the paras 1, 2 and 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, Schedule 12.
Supplementary, Councillor Holland.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At a time of financial challenges, residents may be perplexed as to why are we spending much needed money on redundancy and other exit packages. Could the portfolio holder give assurances to members that all efforts are made to manage those payments down, including by the use of natural wastage and regrading as necessary?
Councillor Harness.
I thank Councillor Holland for the supplementary question. I'm certainly going to resist making comments about people's exit packages or people's rights under their employment. What I would point out is there is a great amount of policy that sits behind people's redundancy or people's discretionary payments. We certainly have 2 heads of service, paid service in the room who could probably give us chapter and verse about those policies. But I'm aware the head of paid service put up a document, discretionary compensation policy, that provides clarity on the NEL's position and this is yearly reviewed to ensure we have a workable policy that is reported to committee, and that committee would be the appointments committee. So there is a great deal of policy that sits behind this, but I'm certainly not going to make comments about the policy. I'm not head of paid service. I'm not a member of the appointments committee, but people do have their rights, Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Councillor Harness. Councillor Henderson, please would you put your question, which is to the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Public have a right to be assured that every penny of their council tax is spent appropriately. In our recent budgeting debate at full council, I was not satisfied that we presented plans to the public which showed that we were doing all we can to reduce council costs. Please can the leader advise us of the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-bound objectives for the programme to in-house aspects of the services currently provided by Equans? Thank you.
Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Henderson, for the question. Firstly, I do not accept the premise that we do not present plans to the public to demonstrate that we are doing all we can to reduce council costs. The budget report and medium-term financial plan presented to the February full council included such information. In addition, there are many other ways in which council costs are scrutinised and challenged in the public domain. For example, at Cabinet, at scrutiny panels, and at the Audit and Governance Committee. A quarterly budget monitoring report is published and is available to elected members and the public. Now, Mr. Mayor, turning to bringing in-house the services currently outsourced to Equans. Throughout the process, elected members have been given a consistent message in that the council will seek to insource these services within the current budget envelope, and this remains the assumption as we progress through the detailed and planned transition programme. It has been explained that Equans will not provide a detailed breakdown of all their costs due to commercial confidentiality. However, some costs are known to us. Actual staff costs and terms and conditions were provided in July 2024, and this information is updated quarterly through the Employment Liability Information Refresh. Contractual costs form part of an appendix to the exit plan. As contracts are novated and procured, these costs are being updated accordingly. Equans fleet arrangements have been reviewed and most vehicles are owned by NELC. 15 vehicles are hired from Equans central or private firms. The council will purchase 11 new vehicles at a cost of £375,100 rather than leasing them, as this is more cost effective. Other existing vehicles will be used as they are currently underutilised. Some costs have been provided relating to materials used, for example, £150,000 for facilities management, £495,000 for highways DLO, costs for stationery, personal protective equipment, which is £17,882, apprenticeships and professional training, etc. With regard to the contractual costs, which are the largest costs after staff costs, business critical and ICT contracts are being novated first, with other contracts novated by the 30th of June. With regard to procurement, these contracts are being identified by value and importance and then split into potential framework contracts and ad hoc expenditure. If potential framework contracts cannot be developed, the council will use direct award for 12 months and then develop longer term framework contracts. With regard to smart financial targets for the programme, these are difficult to formulate, not knowing the full costs. An independent gateway review of the transition has already been undertaken, which provided considerable assurance, with potential issues and key risks subsequently addressed. Cabinet has agreed to a second gateway review in May. This was at the request of the Equans Scrutiny Working Group. This working group was established to scrutinise and challenge all aspects of the transition and has been meeting regularly to contribute to the process. It is chaired by Councillor Holland, Councillor Henderson's group leader. There is a commitment to review service areas 6 to 12 months after transition. All these reviews could go through the Equans Scrutiny Working Group. Arrangements will also be established to ensure that all services, once transferred, are robustly scrutinised by the council's existing scrutiny panels, including with respect to cost control. Cabinet has also requested a report from officers around the opportunities for improved cost control provided by in-house management. Turning now to some specific transition related dates, which I think is also what Councillor Henderson wanted. The 1st of July this year is the transfer date for all Equans branded, is a transfer date, and all Equans branding will be removed. The 1st of July, new vehicles will also be available. July will also be the month in which induction will take place for Equans staff being transferred across to NELC. From July onwards, staff will move into the new teams. 90 days after transfer, all branded PPE will be replaced. On the 31st of October, Equans will submit the majority of accounts up to the close of contract on the 30th of June to the Section 151 officer. And on the 31st of December, Equans will submit final accounts to the Section 151 officer for sign-off. In January to June 2026, service reviews will be undertaken by Assistant Director Leeds, as mentioned earlier. I hope this provides the degree of assurance that Councillor Henderson is looking for. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Henderson?
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. That was an absolutely brilliant response, and I look forward to watching it back later on. My follow-on question, so how much money is it going to save?
Councillor Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said at the beginning, the aim was to ensure that we're able to transfer it across and operate under the existing budget, which is still the current assumption. I think it's fair to say at this stage, we don't know how much money will be saved, if any. And of course, it's not all about necessarily saving money. It's about making sure that we get the best services and the best value for money for the people of North East Lincolnshire. So it would be wrong of me to stand here tonight and say to you, we're going to save £1,325,562 or whatever the figure might be, because at the moment we just don't know. As I explained in my original answer, we haven't been provided with the total cost of the existing services by Equans, because some of that is commercially confidential, and we're not going to get all that information. So I'm afraid I can't be any more precise than that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Bright, please will you ask your question, which is to the Leader of the Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Greater Grimsby Board, of which the Leader and Deputy Leader are members, has an assurance framework which sets out the governance and decision-making structure of the Greater Grimsby Board in relation to the Towns Fund. Within the assurance framework, it states, the board will operate in a transparent and objective way for the benefit of Grimsby and its communities. It will publish its membership, governance arrangements, meeting minutes 5 days in advance of meetings, draft minutes of meetings within 10 working days of the meeting, and then the final minutes within 10 working days of board approval. In the Greater Grimsby Board's meeting of 21st of March 2024, it resolved that following membership review, the board will follow a quarterly meeting regime with at least 2 meetings a year operated as face-to-face meetings. Since that meeting 1 year ago, there's been no meeting minutes published on the Greater Grimsby Board page of the NELC website, contradicting its own assurance framework. Does the council leader share my concerns that the Greater Grimsby Board is not upholding the Nolan principles or complying with its own assurance framework? As a member of this board, will you ensure this is addressed?
Councillor Jackson, will you please reply?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't remember seeing any mention of the Nolan principles in the original question, but anyway, never mind. In response, thank you, Councillor Bright, for the question. In response, by way of background, the Greater Grimsby Board was formed in 2016, very much a first of its kind, supported by David Ross and the late Lord Bob Kerslake and the 2 members of Parliament for the area at the time. The board's primary focus, working with the council and major private sector leaders from the likes of ABP and Orsted, was to articulate a regeneration and economic growth vision and narrative for Grimsby. It worked, and the Greater Grimsby Town Deal was the country's first and led to a change in government policy and another 99 town deals following across the country. It was the work and focus of the board and the first town deal that led to a commitment from Onside to build a youth zone in Grimsby Town Centre, for example. It was the work of the board that engendered the confidence of the likes of Arts Council England and Historic England, leading to greater investment in Grimsby and North East Lincolnshire as another example. The board and significant individuals like David Ross have played a key role in laying the ground for much of what has happened now across the regeneration agenda in the borough. It is the work that the council has done with the board that has contributed to the clear confidence shown by ministers and officials, past and present, in this area. With the introduction of the long-term plan for towns by the last government, now reviewed by the new government and rebadged as the Plan for Neighbourhoods, which I mentioned earlier, the role and focus of the board is being discussed with David Ross in his capacity as chair. The recent change of government and changes in policy initiatives at the national level has resulted in fewer meetings taking place. A key part of the Great Grimsby Board's role has been to scrutinise, challenge and sign off major plans and projects, and to provide assurance to government that grant monies are being spent appropriately and effectively. Government has been satisfied by the way the board has discharged its responsibilities and the assurance provided. Having said that, I hear Councillor Bright's concerns, and the terms of reference and the operation of the board need to be reviewed to take account of the changing political and regeneration landscape. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Bright?
Yes, just one. Could the council leader confirm, has the board met at all since 2024 when it resolved to meet 4 times a year?
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Councillor Jackson.
I can confirm that it's not met at all in 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Casmarat, please will you put your first question, which is to Portfolio Health and Adult Social Care.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Many wards have a rising issue with vermin. Is the portfolio holder for health aware of the growing problem in North East Links?
Councillor Shreve, will you please reply?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. I was somewhat mystified by the question when I first received it, because I am aware of the circumstances that might lead to an increase in vermin. So, for instance, detritus in alleyways or abandoned buildings or fly tipping will generate that. But I took it on myself to, as my own ward has made no representations to me, I did speak to a number of councillors and ask them the specific questions. How many times have you been asked about vermin in your ward? And only one councillor said they had. So I'm aware that's an issue, but I'm not specifically aware that there's an increase. Thank you.
Councillor Shreve, do you have a supplementary, Councillor Casmarat?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask, what do we say to our residents when we're asked, what is the council going to be doing? Are we just going to say, oh, well, the portfolio holder only had concerns raised by one councillor, so all's good, carry on?
Thank you, Councillor Casmarat. Councillor Shreve.
You've sprung the trap that I suspected you might, which is if I said, no, I'm not aware of an increase, you'll say, why not? If I'll say, oh, I am aware of an increase, you'll say, why have you done something about it? So, you know, please don't play politics on such an important issue. There is an issue with vermin in some parts of the ward. I am aware of that. but please don't tell me I'm ignoring it, because I'm not.
Thank you. Councillor Shreve. Can I first pick it or keep it going? Very quick. Councillor Kaczmarek, will you please put your second question, which is portfolio for culture, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will make this as quick as possible. Does the portfolio holder share in my concerns with the many regeneration programmes in Cleethorpes that it could have a negative effect to the visitors coming to our area?
Reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I could just say no, but that'd be a bit rude, wouldn't it, really?
Mr. Mayor, if Councillor Dawkins is going to take 6 minutes, he needs
I'm
to
not going to
indicate
take
that
6
now.
minutes. I'm going to take about 60 seconds. There we go. No, I don't share your concern, and it's for the following reasons. I'm going to rush it a little bit. A consultation took place called Think Cleethorpes, which had the highest participation rates ever, with 2,700 people taking part and spending an average 22 minutes per survey. This led to an overwhelming support for the redevelopments that are due to take place. Council has been fortunate enough to receive 18.4 million to improve Cleethorpes, and although I share people's frustrations that we're not able to complete the work overnight, which I'd love to see, but it's unfortunately not able to do that, we will complete the work as soon as possible, and everyone that I've spoken to is excited to see the developments. I can assure you and the rest of the council chamber we will do everything we can to lessen the impact of the redevelopment works. This is a fantastic opportunity for Cleethorpes. We have not seen money like this ever in Cleethorpes. I don't believe visitor numbers will dip much at all during the works, as it is just a small part of Cleethorpes. However, I believe numbers will increase after the works, as the offering will be better than it currently is. And this time next year, we'll be well on with the works and actually nearing completion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Kaczmarek?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 15, minutes of the Cabinet and committees of the Council. The minutes of the Cabinet and committees of the Council as set out on the agenda have been circulated to members in advance of this meeting. Members are required to submit any questions on these minutes on notice. No questions have been submitted for this meeting. Please note that minute LSC 7 of the licensing subcommittee meeting held on the 19th of December 2024 should state Councillor Mickelber was appointed chair for that meeting. Leader, subject to the amendment, please will you move approval of the minutes of the Cabinet and committees of the Council as set out in the minute book en bloc.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just making a speech. It's nearly 10 o'clock and I'll just move the minutes as set out.
So, do I have a seconder?
Yes, I second the minutes as set out. Thank you.
All those in favour, please show.
Decidedly carry.
Agenda item 16, urgent business. There is no urgent business for consideration at this meeting. Thank you very much, members, for your attendance.